Hey, good morning. How is everybody this morning? Good. My name is James Reeves. In case you don't know me, I'm kind of a strange guy that was sitting in the back for a couple class periods, but I'm a success coach here at the school, and so I'm looking at trying to obtain my teaching licensure. So come along with me, whatever we do. So don't be intimidated by the handout that I have. But it's just so that you can keep track of everything that we've got going on this morning. And what you'll do is you'll need to get a pencil or a pen out. And as I put the slides up on the thing, you can obtain some information and you can fill out the form as you go. So it should be pretty simple, pretty easy for you to follow. I'm going to interject a few things here and there as we go through. It's not just going to be death by PowerPoint, don't worry, but it'll be good. And if you have questions or anything like that, please let me know. We are recording this, so just to let you know, your mom might see it. No, I'm just kidding. Your moms won't see it, believe me. But everything will be good, so we'll get started. So Miss Boone has told me that you guys have started in on the Great Depression. Is that correct? Yes? Okay, great. So with the Great Depression, I'm just going to kind of do an overview these next 3 days with you guys of the Great Depression, and we'll have something similar to what we have today with all that, and it'll be something very similar each day so you know what to expect. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to open up when it comes to the Great Depression, I want to open up with a few stories, or at least one story that I thought was very appropriate with this. So listen very carefully. It says, by 1932, a good life gave way to survival. Camps for the homeless sprang up just outside of the city, seemingly overnight. Families shivered in makeshift tents, cooking and warming themselves around 50-gallon drums of burning wood. Men huddled in groups on the street, waiting, praying for 1 or 2 hours of work. At night, I watched from my bedroom window as people draped in burlap slept on the bag company's ground. Papa, once lucrative recruiting business, had gone bust, and we too were forced to leave our home behind. We moved a lot after that. It got to where we could pack in a heartbeat. Each time we'd scrape together $5 to put down on a rental. My daddy always tossed out the skeleton keys we got to each new place, so we couldn't have locked our doors if we wanted. Why'd you do that? I finally asked. What if someone comes in and robs us? They'd be a darn fool, he said. Once we were settled in a new place, it took at least 3 months to get evicted. If we got lucky, my father scored odd jobs in the meantime, menial tasks, whatever he could find. He paid a month's rent here and there. Mama pitched in capping strawberries in late spring, sewing year-round and shucking oysters at the waterfront until her fingers bled. We kids helped as we could. Everyone did what it took to get by. So there was a story here that spoke of what the people did in certain families during that time to just survive. As you can tell, and we'll find out today, is about during that Great Depression time, a lot was going on. Families all of a sudden found out that the main breadwinner, their father, had to leave the house to try to find a job because he kept losing jobs or couldn't find a job at all. And so there was a lot that was involved with that, and we'll go through some of that today. But that was just something to capture your attention. How many of you have ever seen anything like that before? How many of you have ever experienced homelessness at all? How many of you don't have to answer this question. And how many of you experienced hunger before? Again, you don't have to answer these questions. But at the same time, there's something in each of our lives that maybe we can relate just a tad to what they're doing, or maybe we can't at all. And we're so far removed from it, so far blessed than what other people had been through the years with that. So let's look at this as we go through. Okay, so this is the Great Depression. There's a couple images that are on here. So talk to me a little bit about these images that you see here. So the first one, look right here. You think it's in jest, but look at that. It says 4 children for sale. What would you imagine if your parents had to sell you in order to get by, to survive? Okay, So these things were literally happening during this time. Look at this other one. There were lines where people had to go into soup kitchens to get their daily ration, their daily meal. And having one meal a day was not uncommon during that time. Also jobs, there weren't many jobs at all. So what are some of the things that conjure up? What kind of images come up when you see these pictures? In your mind, what do you think about when you see these pictures? Anything? Come on, we are.
What emotion do y'all feel? When you look at that picture, what emotion do you feel?
Sad.
Yeah, sad.
Depressing.
Very much so. What'd you say?
Depressing.
Yeah, depression. Yeah, you're right. Anything else that you see? Okay. Almost, it talked about on the bottom there, it says shattered dreams. You know, people have dreams. How many of you have dreams for your life about things that you want to do, places you want to go, things you want to see your family to accomplish? All those things are important. But here, during this time, these people had the same dreams that you have, some different, some the same, but those dreams were shattered because of the time period that they lived in, okay? So you can imagine the same people that went through the Great Depression, they're also the same people that went through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. So imagine going through all of that in one short time span, if you will, okay? Okay, so these are the things that you're going to learn today. The first is the essential question: how did the Great Depression impact individuals, communities, and the government's role in our economy? So just kind of without maybe just the information that you have already in your head, maybe what you've gone through with Ms. Boone, maybe what you know so far. How did it impact individuals? How did it impact communities? How many of you have studied this so far enough to where you can comment on that? Anybody? Yes.
It made it harder for people to find jobs.
Okay, made it harder for people to find jobs. Why do you think that is?
Because so many people are trying to work for money, but there's not enough jobs for everybody to work.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so there were lots of people, but there weren't enough jobs to work because the businesses were going belly up. They were closing down, or they were moving overseas, or whatever. And the government's role in that economy. All right, and then the learning objective for today. You'll be able to explain the economic, the political, the social causes of the Great Depression and how they contributed to what's called the stock market crash of 1929. Anybody ever heard of these before? Heard of the stock market crash of 1929 before? Okay, maybe she had gone through that with you. Okay, very good. All right. Okay, so these are the key causes. So if you look at the handout that I've got you, I gave you, these are the key causes of the Great Depression. There are several things on that. First is overproduction and underconsumption. So you'll fill that out on the sheet as you go along, and I'll give you enough time to write it down. You don't have to write the details underneath the graphic, but at least put the headlines, the capitalized stuff. Overproduction and underconsumption. We'll talk about that here shortly. The stock market speculation and crash, okay? Banking failures, unequal distribution of wealth, global economic troubles post World War I, which means after World War I, following World War I. So take the time to fill that out if you would. A lot of big words in there, and vocabulary wise, we'll kind of break some of that down. Don't worry, as you're writing this down, don't worry, nobody's going to really necessarily look at this. You'll get these back if you want to use them for study sheets or whatever. Who's still working? Still working? Okay. pencil on this book? Okay. If you could just look on with some of them and see if they can help you with that. Because we're gonna go through each of these individually too, so if you didn't get this one slide, you can move on to the next one. Okay? Okay, the first thing is overproduction and underconsumption. Overproduction and underconsumption, all right? So what you'll do is on the next section, it's got overproduction and underconsumption. It'll have some fill in the blanks for you. I made the blanks extra long in case you write big or whatever, so don't worry with that. But the words on here that are underlined are not necessarily the word that goes in the blank though. So you just have to follow it, okay? All right, it says during the 1920s and the Great Depression, overproduction, where businesses produced more goods than consumers could afford. That's the first thing. Coupled with, or together with, underconsumption, where people lacked the means to purchase goods, created an economic imbalance that contributed to the crisis. Okay, so just follow through the sentences as you go through, and I'll kind of explain that as we go. Okay, so it says overproduction, where businesses produced more goods than consumers could afford. Okay, so as you go through, what happened was there was an overabundance of things that people could buy, but nobody had the money to buy them. So as we'll learn from the Great Depression, because there were no jobs or there were scarce jobs, all of a sudden that businesses found themselves in a position to where they couldn't ever sell what they produced. Whether that be cars, whether it be fruits and vegetables, whether it be whatever that is, across the country and around the world, there was difficulty in businesses selling off the goods that they produced, okay? Selling off the goods that they produced. All right, next, coupled with, it says that overproduction coupled with underconsumption. Again, what I mean by coupled is put together with, okay? Underconsumption. What do you think underconsumption means, other than without looking there? Yes?
People not buying goods that companies produce.
Okay, very good. So they're not consuming. When you eat something, you're consuming something. Or when you're buying something, you tend to consume it, use it in some manner, okay? So with underconsumption, where people lacked the means to purchase goods, so they couldn't consume it, they couldn't buy it because they didn't have the money, okay? Or somebody else had to supply it for them. All right, so where people lacked the means to purchase good, and both of these things created what's called an economic imbalance that contributed to a crisis, that created a crisis. Does anybody have that? Does anybody have any questions about this at all? Okay, overproduction and underconsumption. There's a couple pictures in here. Again, I want you to tell me what your thoughts are. What do you see in those pictures? What do you see in those pictures? Yes?
There's people at the kitchen.
Okay, people at the soup kitchens. All right, what else? How about you guys over here? What do you see in the pictures? They're easy to identify. Cars, okay. Cars being built that were built in a factory and they're just kind of sitting and waiting, aren't they?
There's a lot of products that still in stock.
Okay, all right, very good. Yes? Yes, cars being fixed or built on. So yes, very much so. Farms were affected as well because one of the things you saw lots of tractors being built, things like that. And again, they didn't have the money or the environment wasn't good enough. So some of you have probably heard of the Dust Bowl before. Anybody ever heard of the Dust Bowl? Okay, so in Oklahoma, in the southwest corner of Oklahoma, in that little thin strip in Oklahoma, there was a thing called the Dust Bowl. And the Dust Bowl, during that time, there were major sandstorms that were happening. And what had how that happened was people were coming through with their tractors and everything else, and they were digging up the soil because people were over consuming things. People were buying things faster than the farmers could make them, and they were making a lot of money doing it. And so the farmers came and they tilled up the soil as fast as they can go. And as they were tilling up that soil, they tilled up what's called the topsoil. Anybody learned in science the different levels of soil? Okay, so the topsoil is what actually helps your plants to grow. Okay, but what happened was because they were digging so much of that topsoil up, when the winds came, it blew that topsoil away. Okay, and they didn't have the crops were not able to grow because of the lack of that topsoil. Okay, so there was a lot going on, and it wasn't just what was happening here, but it was happening all across the United States. It was happening all around the world with all of this under consumption stuff and overproducing all around the world. Anything else this conjures up? Memories or these images? Anything this kind of brings back memories of stuff? You know, during that time, I think that was the same time that during the biggest producer of automobiles was who? You might know the biggest producer, Ford. Very good. And so as he was making vehicles, all of a sudden there was nobody to buy them because they couldn't afford them, except the rich, the people that were really hardly affected by this, although they were affected, and as we'll see. Okay. All right. Next thing. The next section on your sheet is the stock market speculation and crash. Again, there's some big words in there. Speculation is just guessing. The stock market is what's called volatile. Okay, there's lots of ups and downs. Okay, hopefully you can catch it on the ups and you can buy as much as you can, or catch it on the downs and you can buy as much as you can. And when they're up, you want to sell as much as you can so you can make some money. Okay, so the stock market crashed in October 1929, wiping out billions of dollars of wealth and heralding, bringing in the Great Depression. The crash is known as Black Thursday. It was preceded by a period of phenomenal growth and speculative expansion. Again, these things, there's two words in there, growth and expansion, that we look at. So our economy thrives on growth. Okay, and our economy thrives on expansion, looking at the future. Okay, just like I told you a second ago, many of you have dreams for the future about what you want. And so the same way with the market, there are lots of people that have dreams for the future about what they'd like to see different companies doing, if they're doing well, if they're not doing so well, whether that's different businesses selling, you know, even products like laptop computers versus phones versus you know, the market for cars, the market for anything available. And so that's always what's called speculative. They're just guessing, hoping that those things will expand in the future, that things will get better for everyone. Everyone wants things better. And here, they were not able to do that. And the stock market, because of the speculation, it flew up. And we'll see the thing here in just a second. All right, so the stock market, if you look up here, it did really well. Here in the 1920s, things were going really well, and as they were going really well, people began to be very confident in themselves, being very confident in what could happen to America and everything else. And so what happened was here in 1929, it was at an all-time high. Okay, it peaked out. Okay, and then all of a sudden, and again, you have this chart to fill out on your and questions to answer on your sheets there. Then all of a sudden, it tanked out. Okay, so we're going to ask some questions based on this chart. So if you look at the chart, it says, "What do you notice? What do you notice on this chart? What are some of the things you notice? Just talk to me from what you notice, what you see, from what we've talked about so far." Everybody knows. Here's the year listed down here, okay? And here's what's called the Dow Jones Industrial Average, okay? There's an average, okay? And so what do you see from the chart? If nothing else, look at the graph itself. What do you see? Okay, what do you notice? How long did the market crash? How many years did it go down, 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 down? So from 1929, and you keep going down till when? 1932, very good. So that was a long crash. That was 29, 30, 31, 32, so 3 years. This happened in 29, it was like October of 1929 that this was happening. And they were going, and it kept plummeting, okay? And so one of the things that's important to recognize too is not just that it plummeted, okay, but that it also did what? Did it ever recover? What are you seeing from the graph? Yes, it was a slow recovery, but it recovered nonetheless, because you and I, if it never did recover, we wouldn't have the things that we have today. We wouldn't be doing the things that we did today. We probably would not even exist as a country because of those things. So just remember that even though you have a crash, it will always recover because the markets adjust, okay? All right, so what do you think happened? All right, did it peak before it crashed? Yes, we saw that. And what caused the crash? And those are the things that we're talking about here shortly. What caused the crash of the stock market crash during the Great Depression? Everybody have this information? Can everybody answer the questions? Anybody need some help with that? Okay. Take the time that you need. Okay. Very good, very good. Okay, so I think we have to go to lunch right now.
Not yet, we have about
10 minutes?
8 minutes,
Okay, all right, good.
7 minutes,
All right, so
give or take.
we'll do one more thing before we have to go off to lunch. And the next thing is banking failures, okay? Banking failures. During the Great Depression, thousands of banks failed, leading to widespread economic hardship and the loss of millions of American savings. As panic-stricken depositors, and I'll explain this just a second, as panic-stricken depositors rushed to withdraw their funds, triggering a chain reaction of closures and further economic instability, okay? So if you look at this, there's a lot of big words in here, or whichever, so it says thousands of banks failed. Why do you think the banks failed? What do you think? I mean, it says it all right there, but why do you think? Ran out of money, because why? It says up here that people were wanting to take their money out of the bank. So one of the things you have to understand when it comes to a bank is they get your money deposited into their bank. You go with them, you get $100 and you open up your account with that $100. And then when you open up that account, they take that $100 and they're going to use it to benefit them as much as they can. So they're going to take all that money and they're going to put it into other stocks. They're going to put it into things that would help make them money. Okay, and that's how banks make their money, is they take your money and in turn invest it themselves so they can make money. And that's why a lot of times they put interest rates on it for letting them borrow your money for a little while. They're going to give you money back in return, whether it's a savings account, whether it's even some credit unions do checking account interest and things like that they give you. So all that happens to help out. All right, so leading to widespread economic hardship. Okay, so there's a lot of economic hardship during this time because the stock market did crash. Jobs were not being as much as what they could. Crops were failing all across the United States and around the world. Hardship and the loss of millions of Americans' savings. So people, when they all of a sudden found out that the stock markets were crashing, they ran to the bank as fast as they could to try to withdraw the money they had in their account. Well, the banks did not keep all that money on hand, because what did I tell you that the banks did with the money once you deposited it? What happened to it? What happened to the money? You don't remember? I So what happened to the money when you give the bank your money? What do they do with it in turn?
Invested in it.
They invest it, right? So it's not just sitting in the vault. It's not just sitting in their little piggy bank over there, you know, because it's gone. And so all of a sudden, it takes a while to get that back up to a certain amount of money. And so they're going to be, it's not like you go to the bank and you say, I have $100,000 in my account, I need my $100,000 back. And all of a sudden they're saying, uh-oh, you know, it's uh-oh, ruh-roh raggy, you know, kind of stuff. Anybody seen Scooby-Doo? So anyway, I know, it's 8th grade. So millions of Americans' savings were depleted. And then it says, as panic-stricken depositors rush to withdraw their funds. What does it mean to be panic-stricken? Anybody ever been panic-stricken before? Okay, when they were panicking about, how am I gonna make, I remember when I moved out of my parents' house for the first time, okay? And when I moved out of my parents' house, all of a sudden I had these bills I had to afford. I had to pay the rent, I had to pay the grocery bill, I had to pay the electric, I had to pay all that stuff. And so it's like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do, you know? So to an extent, yes, I was a little panic-stricken because I was used to my parents supplying all that for me, okay? But when the real world comes and it slaps you in the face, you know, all of a sudden you realize that panic-stricken can apply to everyone, especially when you don't have what you once had, okay? When you don't have what you once had. These depositors, they rushed to withdraw their funds, and what that did is that triggered a chain reaction of closures of these banks and further economic instability, okay? And look at this, imagine being the owner of this bank. You know, people are standing outside the bank in lines, I'll have my money please, and you know, I don't know if the banks eventually just, or at first said, hey, can I talk you into keeping this here a little bit longer? I know you have $100,000 in the bank, can I give you 100 right now? Just to make it so we can survive, because we've got all these people that are doing the same thing, they want to withdraw their money from our bank. So that's important. So if you look at the little thing down at the bottom, it says depositors run on a failing New York City bank in an effort to recover their money, July 19.
How many of y'all have a job or earn money somehow? Chores, or you work somewhere, you work with your parents, you do something to earn money. Okay, so imagine you've given that money to your parents for them to save. Okay, well, it's time for you to buy something. Well, they spent it because they had to pay for something. They had to pay for a bill, and now you don't have money anymore. They're like, oh well, sorry, your money's out of luck, right? And you trusted your mom or your dad or whoever to take care of this money for you, and now it's gone, and they're just like, you'll earn more. It's okay, right? Let's think about that. Think about how they're having to feel. I mean, you might not have to pay bills, but you do have things you want, right? So just think about that. You might not have a bank account, but you might give your money to someone that you trust to hold on to it or save it. So,
Very good.
alright, I think we are going to lunch.
Okay, so just keep your stuff on here.